Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Who can tell me what the Russian Yatra has been doing here in the past year? Hare Krishna.
I'll speak a little bit. First of all, I start with a great thank you. You have been visiting and kindly allowing us to meet with you. This is, I think, for the third time in a row, yeah. And very special thank you for your instruction that you gave us last time, which was in terms of how to boost our outreach. You suggested, why don't you start with social media? And also you suggested that we don't forget about the Harinams. So we sort of completed and started the first part with your blessings. The social media team started, and right now we have the outreach about 1K in social media. For us it's a big success. Thank you very much for your blessings. And as for Harinams, we are still in the initial phase, let's say. We now have Govinda Prabhu and who we heavily rely on, and hopefully something good will come out of all our enthusiasm, and again with your blessings, which we're seeking. We'll probably start doing Harinams this summer, and yeah. Other than that, the yatra is growing. We are able to attract a few new devotees. We started Bhakti Bhringa this, actually last year, which was also useful for those who live in a relatively remote area. So they come, they have opportunity to have association, get some prasadam, kirtan, etc. And yeah, we celebrated all the major festivals this year, and the Simu Chaturdashi, etc., etc., which I think sort of boosted all our community spirit, let's say, because when we serve together, it's a very nice opportunity. And also, one thing that has happened over the, let's say, last year is we discovered a great talent among our devotees that they really like doing cooking for a large number of devotees. So we've done it 3 times this year, I think, 600 and then 400 and that kind of number. Under the guidance of our cook, Radhikatma Prabhu, he was able to inspire us and guide, and I think this has also allowed us, to feel joy and inspiration in real seva. Not just reading and getting association, but also serving each other and other devotees. Oh yeah, and we have done a few yagyas by our, again, Radhikatma Prabhu, which also provides some sort of puts a colorful thing into our daily life, let's say. I think that's, in a nutshell, what has been happening. Sorry? Oh yeah, well, this goes without saying. Like, we do have weekly programs. We have been having them for the last 2-3 years with no interruptions. No matter if it's bad weather, good weather, etc. We're trying to keep it steady so the devotees can have an opportunity to come and get association, kirtan, a little bit of reading and katha, etc.
One more thing in addition to that, Jamshid Prabhu is actually heading up our book distribution and of the books in Russian. So he established a website where people all over Canada can order books online, so he ships them anywhere. So we have some new people find us online and order books, but also within the community or on the festivals, we have pretty good numbers with books in Russian are being distributed. Thanks to Jamshid Prabhu.
That shipping books to the Russian-speaking community.
Yeah.
Great. Nice report. Nice report. Yeah, now you've got Govinda. He is one of the he's one of the fruits of the Uzbek Yatra. And as we all know, Uzbekistan has got the best fruit in the world.
Haribo.
Srila Prabhupada commented that the area of India's northwest, going up to the Caspian Sea, is called Bhuswarga, or heaven on earth. And he commented in that way because he said they have like lush fruit gardens through that area. And it's really true about Uzbekistan. They have the nicest fruit on the earth planet, and he's one of those fruits. I guess I've known Govinda since he appeared in this world. And when he was just a little guy, about 6 or 7 or 8, I don't know how old he was, but just a little guy, we had a wild kirtan in Tashkent one time. And he and 2 other girls, Shri Radhika and Lalita. And there was another girl also. I used to call her Annie Banani.
Nayana.
Huh?
Nayana. Nayana.
Nayana. Nayana Banana. And her brother, what was her brother's name?
Nitai. Yeah.
Huh?
Nitai. His name's Nitai.
Nitai. These kids, they would like come up and grab the microphone away from me, and they would like start singing like rock stars. You know? It was like you never saw so many smiles in your life as when these kids were just like tearing up the kirtan. Tashkent was one of those Tashkent is like Finsky sauna in the summertime, and it's as hot as North India. And we used to have kirtans in the Tashkent temple room where there'd be so much perspiration coming off the devotees that people would be slipping on the floor and falling over because it was like mad dancing and in pools of water of perspiration. And he was there. And his big brother is my initiated disciple. His name is Kirtan Rasa. Is that correct?
Acharya Das. Yeah.
Kirtan Rasacharya. And he resides in Dubai. And his mama is my disciple also.
Shamavalapi.
Shamabalabi there, then I have a Shamabalaba in Tatarstan, Balaba, Balabi. And his mama, I mean, when I started going to Uzbekistan in 1992, she was there already. I remember your mom from the very beginning. So you have nice fruit of Uzbek Yatra over here to help you out. It's nice to see you all, and it's nice to see that many faces I recognize. I can't remember names so much anymore, but I can recognize faces. And to know that you're still practicing your Krishna consciousness to the best of your ability. And it's heartening to hear that you're staying together and that you're serving together and that you're trying to help others in your service. One theme that I keep coming back to as I meet devotees all over the world is oftentimes in our society, the emphasis is so much on reaching out to the new people who don't understand anything about Krishna consciousness, to give them the good message that Lord Chaitanya came to give and the good message that we receive in chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And that includes very specifically the love of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the compassion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the humanity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we're very much a missionary type society that we're reaching out. But the theme that I keep looking at is that love and compassion, humanity, which we're always broadcasting outside, we should really broadcast it inside. And we should make sure that each and every one of our members, we're always showing our love, and we're always showing our kindness, and we're always accepting people for who they are and not being judgmental about anyone. You know, all of us, I think we can safely say that all of us are broken souls, and all of us are endeavoring to become complete souls. And we should have that basic understanding so that we always help one another to come to the position of accepting and practicing in a better way Krishna consciousness. So really sort of make that a theme of your group. Like last year I maybe said social media and Harinam. You know, this year really focus more on caring for one another and nourishing one another. You know, helping our neighbors with their dacha plot. You know, if too many weeds, if too many obstacles are there, you know, help our neighbor to, you know, take the weeds out. If something gets broken with one of our neighbors, help fix it, you know. It's like, I guess many of you are young folks. Many of you perhaps were just born when Soviet Sky Soyuz was finishing. And people think of Soviet Sky Soyuz, at least in the West, they say, oh, Soviet Union, so bad thing. But in Soviet Union, I noticed that they had this spirit of druzhba. They had the spirit of friendship, where people would always help one another. And that's something that I always found appealing of all of the countries of the former Soviet Union, that people, they always had a culture to try to help one another. So that should really be our culture in Krishna consciousness as well, that we're always endeavoring to help a person. And Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita that every living being is his part and parcel. He says that everybody is my angsha, everybody is a part of me. And that means that all of us sitting here, our nature is that we're Satchidananda. But now we have a different identity. Instead of, you know, accepting our Satchidananda identity, we're accepting the identity of being man or woman, or Russian, or Ukrainian, or American, or Indian, or so many different identities we come up with. And he goes to say that when the living beings who are all of my nature, when they live in the material nature, then instead of experiencing their ananda nature, they're always experiencing a nature where they're always struggling, and there's always a lot of hardship. And that's truly the life in the material world, you know. Last week I was after Sadhu Sangha. Did anyone go to Sadhu Sangha? Oh, so many people. After Sadhu Sangha, I went to visit my oldest brother. He's 85, and he lives in a town in Florida that's called God's Waiting Room. You don't see anyone there under 70 years old. They're all waiting for their flight to be called. And then I went to California and I visited my disciple Shama Priya from South Africa and her husband Nrihari, who's an Indian, I think born in America. And they live in an area outside of Los Angeles called Anaheim Hills. And Anaheim Hills is a real pretty place. You know, very, very pretty. And all the houses just look so idyllic. And all the lawns look like they're trimmed every day. And along the sides of the roads, this beautiful manicured gardens. And the roads look like they were just laid down yesterday. I mean, they maintain everything so nicely. And I came to understand, wow, this is what you call illusion. Because the people that live inside of those pretty houses and live in that environment, they're all going crazy with their minds. And if they're not going crazy with their minds, they wake up one day and something doesn't feel good and they go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, you have 4th stage cancer. Or, you know, wife wakes up and looks over at her husband laying in bed and he's dead. You know, that's the life in this world. It's just always a struggle which is going on. And that doesn't exclude the practicing devotees. I mean, did anyone here, when you came to Krishna consciousness, did anyone ever tell you that life is going to be free from suffering? No, we lie. We lie to people. We say, you just chant Hare Krishna and everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be ananda. It's going to be like sadhu sangha kirtan, you know, for the next 75 years. But everybody struggles. Look how Kunti suffered. Look how her sons suffered. Think of Yudhisthira after the war. I mean, he was having psychological trauma because he felt like it was all the death of his whole family was because of him, isn't it? Mm-hmm. He was so distressed. Think of Haridas Thakur. You know, Haridas, you know, he was, of course, he was born in family practicing Islam, but from his very birth, from his previous birth, he was a great Vaishnava. And only thing he had attraction for was the holy name, and because of that, people wanted to torture him. Who here has ever heard Niranjan Swami Maharaj speak about that pastime when Lord Chaitanya's sitting on the throne in Srivas Thakur's house, and he's addressing all the devotees. He's calling the devotees and he's giving mercy. I heard Niranjan Swami speak on this a couple times, and when he speaks, you know, he gets so animated and he becomes absorbed in the Leela. But Haridas, he was called by Lord Chaitanya that night when Lord Chaitanya started revealing his divinity. And Lord Chaitanya was talking to Haridas, and he was saying, you have so much love for everyone. You don't want to offend everyone. You have so much dedication to Krishna's holy name. He said, even they were trying to kill you. And they took you to 21 marketplaces. And each marketplace, they were like tying you up, and they were like hitting you with canes. But you know, while they were beating you and doing this to you, what were you doing? You were just praying for their well-being. And he wouldn't die. And finally, in one of the marketplaces, one of the people that was beating them, they saw that Haridas wouldn't die. And they said, excuse me, sir, could you please do something for us? Haridas said, yes, what is it you want? And they said, could you please die? Because if you don't die, we're going to die. And Haridas said, Da Krishna. And Haridas, by his mystic potency, he just died and left his body. And then they went and they threw his body in the river. They were thinking, finished, that's it, we did our job. And then after some time, Haridas just called his life heirs back into his body and he got out of the river and that was it. Lord Chaitanya was saying, they were beating you so much and you were just praying for them. And he said, Haridas, he said, when they were beating you, I was standing over your back and I was protecting you. And then Lord Chaitanya turned around and showed his back. And he had all the cane marks on his back from the people who had been beating him. Haridas suffered. Jesus Christ suffered. Like Srila Prabhupada, he mentions what was the crime of Jesus Christ? He said the only thing he did is he preached love. And because he was preaching love, the first thing they did is they killed him. You know. So this idea that coming to the spiritual path means it's going to be Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. That's not correct. Because all of us, we have to undergo trial and tribulation according to our past good deeds and bad deeds. No one can escape the reactions of their karmas. So if that's the fact, and if we understand that everybody has the potential for suffering in this world, including the person sitting next to you, and the person sitting next to you, then we should always have an open heart for helping. Not just broadcasting to the world, but we should have an open heart for helping one another and trying to help devotees according to whatever capacity that we have to get through their struggles of life so that they can, they can make it to the end of the journey and they can become Krishna conscious. That's the message for this year. Last year, social media, Harinam. This year, really take care of one another. And double up on taking care of one another. Triple up on taking care of one another. Is anyone here initiated by Niranjan Sai Maharaj? Is anyone here from Ukraine? And you've seen, like the devotee care, the way they would have those big festivals and care for the devotees, just with open heart. Really be open heart with one another. Please be willing to give of yourself to help others in Krishna consciousness. And for sure, if you do it, Lord Chaitanya will throw his mercy. So that's the message. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. And I can say that there's nothing more wonderful and there's nothing more satisfying than helping Vaishnavas and serving Vaishnavas. You'll never find anything more satisfying. I'll tell you a story that I've told 1,001 times, and maybe you've heard me tell it 500 times, but I'm going to say it again. That in 1977, a few weeks before Srila Prabhupada passed away, I was the cook in Vrindavan. And I would go to Mangal Artik, and after Mangal Artik, I would go into the kitchen. First I'd go upstairs to the ashram and I would put on a gamsha and a t-shirt. And I'd go to the kitchen and I'd light the fires, because back then we only cooked on wood. We had no gas, we had no electricity. And I would start cooking after Mangal Artik. I would cook breakfast, and I'd make sure that it was offered to Krishna and Balaram. And I kept the kitchen so clean, even in Vrindavan at that time, 50 years ago, that I felt, yes, it's good, I can offer this to the deities. And then I'd cook the lunch, and I'd have the lunch, everything cooked by the time of the noon offering, so we could offer it to Krishna Balaram, and then cook chapatis after. And by the time, and then the devotees would come at, I think, 2 o'clock, take prasadam, and I would serve prasadam, and then I'd go back in, me and my helpers would clean up the kitchen, and by about 4 o'clock, 3:30 or 4, I'd be finished. And I would be black from top to bottom because of the soot from cooking on wood and picking up the pots and so on. I'd be totally black. So I'd go up to the kitchen, I'd go up to the ashram, to the shower, and I had a plastic scrub brush, and I had a bar of laundry soap, and I'd scrub myself till I became white again. And then I would put on my dhoti and kurta, and I'd go over and I would sit in Srila Prabhupada's room. Because at that time, Prabhupada's doors were always open. It was sort of like in the beginning of the movement, his doors were always open, and the young people could just go in his room and they would sit down and just talk, and Prabhupada just listen very patiently, listen to all the insanity, and then Prabhupada would encourage them, please try to understand that the real source of the problem is that you think you're the body, but you're not the body. That's the root cause of all problems. And please chant Hare Krishna. So the doors were always open like that. But at the end of Prabhupada's life, and then he went into world acharya mode, and he circled the earth 12 times or 14 times, whatever it was, in 12 years that he was preaching. And then at the end of his life, when he couldn't travel anymore, doors were open again. And anybody could go in and sit down with Srila Prabhupada. And he just lay on his bed. He had no energy to just have regular conversation. But we would go in his room, and there'd always be some light kirtan going. And sometimes Pradumna or Jayadvaita Swami would be reading Srimad Bhagavatam to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was giving commentary. When he was so ill, they would hold the microphone to his mouth, and Pradumna would read something that Pradumna had read a verse that he had translated and give the word for word, and then Prabhupada would either approve it or Prabhupada would tweak it in some way. And then Prabhupada would speak the commentary while he was laying there on the bed, and you could hardly hear him at all. So I scrubbed myself after cooking one day, and I went over, and Prabhupada's door wasn't open. It was locked. And I was thinking, oh, Srila Prabhupada must be having a bad day today, so they want less devotees to come and sit. And then I turned and I saw one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers standing there. And his name was Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. And Prabhupada loved him very much. And he was a pure devotee of Krishna. Prabhupada told us he was a Paramahansa Vaishnava. So when I saw Babaji Maharaj, I'd met him before, so I went on the ground and I made dandavats. And then I took the dust from his lotus feet and I said, Maharaj, what do you want? Or what can I do? And he said, I want to see Prabhupada immediately. Okay. So I knew that there was a back way through the guest house lobby into Prabhupada's garden, into Prabhupada's house. So I went through there and I went up to Prabhupada's, like the door on the other side of his room. And Prabhupada was laying on the bed, and His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami was sitting on the bed next to Prabhupada. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj would always be with Prabhupada, encouraging him, and trying to inspire Prabhupada to please stay with us. And so I went into the room and made dandavats. Then I walked across the room, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj looked at me, and I said, Akinchana Krishnadas Baba is here. He wants to see Prabhupada immediately. And then Tamal Krishna Goswami turned to Prabhupada and said, Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji is here. He wants to see you immediately. And Prabhupada looked up and said, bring him immediately. So I ran out and I got Babaji Maharaj and I said, come. And I brought him in. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj got off the bed and Babaji Maharaj just bounced up on the bed next to Prabhupada. And they started making pranam to one another. And Babaji Maharaj was always smiling and laughing. Babaji Maharaj was constantly chanting. It's like if you ever listen to the room conversations from 1977, whenever they call Babaji Maharaj, you hear me, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He just didn't stop, 24 hours. And he was happy. And I was thinking, now this is my choice moment of life. I'm looking at two pure devotees together. What's going to happen? And what happened is they started cracking jokes with one another. And Babaji Maharaj would say something funny. Prabhupada laid on the bed like... And then Prabhupada would say something funny, and Babaji Maharaj would go, Babaji Maharaj would say something else to Prabhupada, and Babaji Maharaj said something, and Prabhupada went, Tadira charana seva bhakta sanivas, janame janami hoy e avilas, which is the line from Narottam Das Thakur. And Narottam Das says, my only desire is to live in the association of the Vaishnavas, birth after birth, and to serve their lotus feet. And Prabhupada, he said that, and Babaji Maharaj was a little caught off by that. But then a second later, Babaji Maharaj cracked a joke, and Prabhupada was like, Prabhupada said something funny. Babaji Maharaj says it, and Prabhupada went, Tadira charana seva bhakta sanivas, janami hoy e avilas. And then I thought, that's the message. That's the message. That we should always desire to be in the association of Vaishnavas. And in their association, we should only have one aspiration, and that's to serve their lotus feet. Always do Vaishnav Charana Seva. And then Srila Prabhupada looked up and he said, could you please sing a bhajan for me? And Babaji Maharaj said, yes, Maharaj. And so he sang this song, Harinam Tua Aneka Sarupa, Bhajan by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is a Nama Mahatmyam song. And then he finished, and Prabhupada was laying there, and he was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Babaji Maharaj was saying, Maharaj, now I have to go. And Prabhupada was like, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming to see me. Thank you for singing. Thank you so much. And then Babaji Maharaj just sort of bounced off the bed. He was very spry, very, very spry. And he bounced off the bed and he started to head out the door. And Prabhupada said, he must have prasadam. He must have Mahaprasadam. And then Tamal Krishna Goswami looked at me and he said, he must have Mahaprasadam. So then I started running to catch up with Babaji Maharaj. And he was just, he was just in guest house area. And I said, Maharaj, please, you wait here. Prabhupada said, you must have Mahaprasadam. And he said, yes. He was very obedient. And he sat down and I went to the front of the temple and I got a little leaf cup and there were 2 besan laddu inside, very simple sweets. 2 besan laddu and a tulsi leaf. And so I brought that back and I gave it to Babaji Maharaj. When I put it in his hand, he looked up and he said, you've given me Mahaprasadam. You're so kind. You've given me Krishna's Mahaprasadam. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And he said, may I go now? I said, yes, Maharaj. So he got up with his 2 besan laddu and he started to leave the guest house. And now when you go in the guest house, they have the one entrance, and on the left side they have the registration counter or whatever. That used to be, years ago, 50 years ago, there was a door there. And it had like 1 step down. And Babaji Maharaj was going out that door. When he took his step down, there was a person sitting on the steps. And he looked down, and she looked up. It was Srila Prabhupada's sister, Bhishima. And she looked like her face was just like Prabhupada's face, but with like long gray hair that had been oiled with mustard oil, and a white sari tied around her, and very round, and pretty much totally bent over by the waist. Sometimes you see those old Indian Matajis in the bazaar, they have back problems and they're so bent over. Bhishima was sort of like that. And in her hand she had a little bottle of Ganga Jal. And so she looked up and she saw Babaji Maharaj. This big smile came on her face. And he saw her and this big smile came on their face. And she looked up and she said, I'm going to touch your lotus feet. He said, yes. And so with her bent over body, she started like going to his feet. And just when she was going to put her fingers on his toes, he'd like scoot backwards. And he'd just start laughing and laughing. And she would look at him, blah, 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 blah. And he'd, yes. And then she would go and she'd just be ready to touch his feet. And he'd scoot back again. And then finally she went and she took the dust from his lotus feet. And it was like when you see like films or movies or clips of Srila Prabhupada, like everything that he does is always very sort of aristocratic, very refined. Bhishima was like that too. And it's like she took the dust from his feet and then first she put it on her eyes, then she rubbed it on her head, and then she was rubbing it on her heart. And then she was it was like a full, and then she was licking her, it was like a full sensory experience. And then she just looked up at Babaji Maharaj, and Babaji Maharaj said, I have Mahaprasad. Would you like some prasadam? Now Bhishima, she was probably the best cook on earth. And in her lifetime, she probably had cooked, 20 tons of besan laddu. But she saw this little simple besan laddu. You put it in her hand, and she was like, "Thank you. Thank you. You've given me Mahaprasadam. I'm so fortunate." And then she had her little bottle of Ganga Jal. She said, "I have Ganga Jal. Would you like some Ganga Jal?" He said, "Oh, yes." So he put out his hand and she put some drops of Ganga Jal and he drank it. And then they were just like, you could definitely see that they loved one another, but it wasn't any like man-woman type of love. It was just like spiritual love was just radiating from these people. And they said few words. And then Babaji Maharaj said, "Please excuse me, I must go." And so then he just turned around and took off very fast. That's what it should be like with devotees, our relations with devotees. Just sweet, loving relationships. And one time after Mangal Artik, Pishima was coming out the side of the temple, and she was with Devi Shakti. And when she was coming out of the temple, she's a little bit kind of tripped, and I was there and I sort of like steadied her. And then I looked at her, and Devi Shakti must have translated for me. And I said, "Pishima, why do you always have Ganga Jal in your hand?" Because she always had Ganga Jal in her hand. I said, "Why do you always have that bottle of Ganga Jal?" And she looked up and she said, "I live in this very, very nasty body, this very, very nasty material body. And whenever I sit down in any place, that place becomes contaminated. So when I get up, anything I touch, I sprinkle with Ganga Jal to purify it." Can you imagine having consciousness like that? Generally, we think wherever we sit becomes a place of pilgrimage. And she was just like, "I just purify, because I contaminate everything." So we should have sweet relations like that. And we should always be having helping relations to one another. And we should always be conscious that even though we're doing the right thing by endeavoring to improve our consciousness through Krishna consciousness, still there's a lot of headaches along the way. Physical problems with our mental health, problems with, all around us, problems with other living beings. Everybody needs help. So make sure that we don't just take our message of love and humanity and apply it to the people outside, but always try to help all the devotees as well to grow in their Krishna consciousness and develop a real loving family and a real loving Sangha. And that is the message. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Nice to see you all again. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask a question. We hear so many different stories from devotees, how they come to Krishna consciousness and how they fight to find it. And what to do for those who are born in Krishna consciousness and once in a while take it for granted because it's always been there. And sometimes we forget how special it is because it's always been there. It's like breathing. And sometimes I take it for granted. And how not to.
You know, even for those who are born in Krishna consciousness, I think if there's like a real loving and caring network of devotees around them, when they grow and they start making decisions on their own, they'll always reflect on the kindness and the goodness of the association which they've had. And folks born in the movement, sometimes they want to dabble in, instead of just like the taste of what's on the plate in front of them, they want to experience some things from material life. And even if they do that, I don't think we should be judgmental, but I think we should just keep loving, and keep trying to encourage. I've seen generations of young people grow up in Krishna consciousness, and I've seen some who they've had bad experiences and they completely feel disenfranchised from ISKCON. But I've seen others grow up in a real loving and caring network. And they may try to experience some thrills of the material world, but then they come back in and they practice. So I think it's patience. I think the best thing we can use is patience. I even saw Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada could sit on the Vyasa-san and really speak the strict rules of the Vedas and the strict rules of Krishna consciousness. And he could be finished with his class and he could go to his room and one of his leaders would come and say, Srila Prabhupada, I really messed up bad. I did everything wrong. And Srila Prabhupada just listened. And he would say, yes, it's not good, but you should stay with us, and you should continue, and you should, keep advancing in the society of Vaishnavas. There's one example of, I have one godbrother, he's passed away now. He was so effulgent, and he was such a good preacher, and he was such a good Harinam person, and he was a big pioneer. And he pioneered ISKCON in New Zealand and Australia and these different places. And like all the other young men of that era, when Prabhupada started giving sannyas to some devotees, he wanted to become a sannyasi. And Srila Prabhupada knew it was a great risk to give sannyas to young men, but Srila Prabhupada wanted to spread the movement. So he's one of these young people, who, he was so attractive. His whole nature was he was so charismatic that, and being so young, and definitely being a sannyasi would present difficulties. And it did present difficulties. And after it became known that he was having some liaison with young ladies. Then Prabhupada's secretary, when he heard the news, Prabhupada's secretary wrote a letter to the entire society, such and such has fallen down. And when Prabhupada came to understand that, Prabhupada became so infuriated, really infuriated. He said, you have dishonored him. Now how will he continue to practice his Krishna consciousness? And so on Rupa Goswami's appearance or disappearance day in 1977 in Vrindavan, it coincided with the day that Srila Prabhupada was leaving Vrindavan for that last trip to England. Satsvarup Maharaj was so kind that he flew all the way to Australia. He found this devotee, he grabbed him, and he said, I know that you feel ashamed, I know that you feel very shy, and you feel very down because you made a mistake. It doesn't matter. I'm taking you to see Srila Prabhupada. So he grabbed that devotee and he took him to Vrindavan to see Srila Prabhupada. And he spent the whole afternoon with Prabhupada. Then that evening we went on a Harinam down to Radha Damodar temple. And this person, he led the kirtan the whole way. He was just himself, you know. He was so shiny, he was so effulgent. He was so happy and chanting the holy names. When we got to Radha Damodar, I went to him and I said, what did Srila Prabhupada say? He said, Srila Prabhupada told me, it doesn't matter if you wear orange cloth or if you wear white cloth. He said, the important thing is that you always stay with me, and that we always live together, and that we always grow in Krishna consciousness. He said, please never leave my side. I want you to be with me. So, sometimes people would think that Prabhupada would pull out the stick and knock a person on his head for making a mistake like that. But Prabhupada wasn't like that. Prabhupada was like so loving and kind and compassionate, non-judgmental. And he was just like, if he saw the person having problems, he would say, okay, problems are there, but you know, let's keep going together. So for those who have been born in the movement, if they go through periods, you know, we just have to keep loving them and, you know, encouraging them on the path. Once, many years ago, I went to Tatarstan, and in the afternoon they told me, Maharaj, some people want to come and meet you. I said, okay. So I went. The first lady that came, she was probably only about 40. No, she was probably, 40. Yeah, she's probably only 40 or something like that. But she had a son who was about 17. And her husband was an oligarch. He owned all of the telecommunications in Tatarstan. And she was like a young lady. She was really a nice lady. And I walked in, she was going, Maharaj, what are you going to do to my son? What are you going to do to my son? I said, what? She said, what are you going to do to my son? I said, what did your son do? She said, I keep catching him smoking marijuana. When she said that, I just got a big smile on my face, and I said, Mataji, I said, a lot of boys try that. A lot of the young people try that. It's just a phase that he's going through. What should I do? What should I do? And I said, you love your son, right? She said, yes, I love my son. I said, keep loving him. There's nothing more powerful, than your love to help your son. So that should be there. Okay, everyone. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you all again. And I hope you stay for Kirtan this evening. Now I'm going to go and chant some japa, and I will join you at the Kirtan at 6 o'clock. Okay? Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Prabhupada ki. Or Bhakti Bhringa ki. Jai Govinda Swami. Hare 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 Krishna.